I get it when you're about to spend a few $100 on a laser grading system, you're already picturing the job site, the crew, and the inevitable, what if I pick the wrong kit? It's that moment where you stare at the spec sheet and wonder if the numbers actually translate to a day that runs smoother, not a day that stalls because the receiver won't hold its line in the field. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. And I'm here to walk through the real-world side of that decision before you click. First off, the Leica Rugby 680 isn't just another laser level you'll toss on a tripod and hope it behaves. It's packaged with the Rod I-120 receiver, an alkaline power kit, and a dual-grade dial that lets you set slopes up to 8 degrees. The whole idea is to give you a handheld way to grab a reference point from a laser that's shooting out to 4,000 feet. That range sounds impressive on paper, but what matters is how often you'll actually need that distance on a typical job site. If you're laying out a driveway that stretches across a large lot, or you're doing a road-based grading where you need to keep a consistent crown, hitting that 4-kilometer mark can save you from walking the line with a tape measure and a second-guessing crew. Now, why does the range matter? In my experience, the biggest time sink on a grading job is chasing a laser that disappears behind a hill or a row of trucks. The Rugby 680's claim of 4,000 feet when paired with the laser receiver means you can set up the transmitter in a clear spot, maybe on a portable tower, and still have a solid reference out at the far edge of the site. That cuts down on the number of times you have to reposition the whole system, which directly translates into labor savings. The trade-off, though, is that you need a clear line of sight for that distance to work. If your job is a cramped urban lot with a lot of overhead obstructions, you'll probably never reach that maximum range, and the extra headroom becomes a nice-to-have rather than a must-have. Accuracy is the next big question. Leica says you get about 1/16" at 100 feet, with a horizontal self-leveling capability that stays within 5 degrees even if the device isn't perfectly level. In plain English, that means if you're laying a concrete slab and you need the corners to be within a fraction of an inch of each other, the system can keep you there without you having to constantly readjust the tripod. I've seen crews use similar accuracy levels for drainage trench work, where a small variance can cause water to pool in the wrong spot. The 5-degree self-level window is forgiving enough that you don't have to be a perfectionist with the tripod, but it's still tight enough that you notice if something's off no more, just eyeball at moments. The dual-axis gel-in slope is where the Rugby 680 tries to set itself apart. You can manually dial a slope up to 8 degrees, and the system also offers a smart slope to previous feature that remembers the last angle you set. Imagine you've just graded the first lane of a two-lane road, and you need the second lane to match the same crown. With the Smart Recall, you don't have to write down the angle or pull out a separate protractor. You just hit the button and the receiver snaps back to that exact setting. That can be a real time saver when you're dealing with repetitive grading tasks. But no system is without its quirks. The Rugby 680's receiver is powered by an alkaline kit, which means you're dependent on battery life for the whole day. In the field, I've heard seasoned surveyors say that alkaline cells can start to dip after a few hours of continuous use, especially in colder weather. That's not a deal breaker, but it does mean you should carry spares or consider a rechargeable option if you're planning a marathon day on the job. Another point to consider is the IP67 rating. Yes, it's dust-tight and can handle being submerged up to a meter for 30 minutes, which is great if you're working in a dusty quarry or you accidentally knock it into a puddle. However, the rating doesn't protect you from a full-blown rainstorm that lasts longer than a half hour. You'll still need a cover or a quick shelter to keep the optics clean. So, who should actually buy the Rugby 680? If you're a contractor who regularly handles large-scale grading, think road construction, site development, or extensive landscaping, this system's long range and slope recall will likely pay for itself in reduced setup time and fewer remeasurements. It also makes sense for surveyors who need a portable, rugged solution that can survive the occasional splash without missing a beat. The combination of high accuracy and a decent self-leveling window means you can trust the numbers even when the ground isn't perfectly flat, which is a huge confidence boost when you're signing.